Vishwa, it's an online platform for social champions, for change makers, everyday change makers that we see around us, who have put decades of work, of their lifetime, their earnings, into making a difference, to serve others, and to make our world a better place.
Hello, everyone. A very good morning and welcome to Vishwa Talks. My name is Prashant Shetty. Thank you all for attending today's event. For those of you who have attended a Vishwa Talk before, a warm welcome back. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, here's a little bit about us. Vishwa Talks is a space to expand the horizons of your mind. Every webinar, we call experts from different domains to discuss and examine opinions, issues, problems, and perspectives. Each webinar is an interactive session where we walk away with more respect for each other and a deeper understanding of the topic at hand. If you miss a session, please visit our website or YouTube channel for a full library of past Vishwa Talks on interesting topics. Today on Vishwa Talks, we will be discussing on the cause community development. Our speaker for today's Vishwa Talks is Sylvester Merchant, and they will lead us through the session in just a few moments. Sylvester Merchant, along with Prince Manvendra Singh Gohil, conceived, conceptualized, and formulated Lakshya Trust, the first community-based organization for sexual minorities in Gujarat. They have worked in the capacity of project design and management, program and finance planning, assessments, monitoring and evaluation, capacity building, and documentation, while being affiliated with the International Planned Parenthood Federation, Frontline AIDS, Resource Center for Sexual Health and HIV/AIDS, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, New Delhi, DAPCU, SACS, TSU, NACO, NAPO, and HCP. They work to assess the situation of LGBTQI communities beyond the metros. They have also held many awareness programs, as well as help in strengthening organizations such as NOQ IQ, Shakti, Sangat, Lakshya Foundation, Lakshya Trust, etc. Before we get started, I would like to inform our audience that our speaker will be taking questions from you after our curated questionnaire ends. So please leave your questions in the chat or raise a hand and we will allow you to ask your question in person. I request everyone to turn on your webcam for interactive part of the webinar. Now, without further ado, I invite our speaker to begin today's Vishwa Talk. A very good morning, Sylvester.
Thank you, Prashant, and thank you, Vishwa Talks, for providing me a platform to share my story with a larger audience. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for taking time and gracing this event. Without any delay, I have a few questions that we've curated for you. So I'm going to go on to the first one. The first one is a little personal, sort of. What challenges did you face while you were coming out as a trans person?
Wow. So if I look back, actually, and also before actually initiating this discussion, I would just like to inform everyone that the camera of my laptop is not very good. So at times I will switch off and on as well, because if it is blurry, I will switch on and then switch off and then on it. So my coming out, basically, well, I was actually born in a small town near Baroda, and I come from a very typical middle-class Gujarati Christian tribal mix kind of a family. And basically, and in those days, when I actually, I got to know about myself, or I would say I was discovering myself, there was no only one term which was used, and that was homosexual. Not even gay, not even lesbian. So in those days, and this was more very academic kind of a word used. So in fact, in those days, I wasn't even aware about the term transgender. I'm letting this camera thing happen, and let me still wait. If it persists, then I will switch on and off. So what happened at that point in time is, we didn't even have the words like transgender. Forget about, even identifying. But yes, we did have Indian traditional identities such as Kinnar, Jogtis, Jogwas, Hijra identity. But the problem at that point in time was that nowadays people really, really openly even identify oneself as being from the trans community. But in those days, it's so much of stigma basically attached with even, uttering the word hijra or trans person. So the easiest way for me to identify myself was to identify was just being as a gay guy. But somewhere from within inside, I always felt that, I do not belong to the male part of the binary, I would say. And of course, more than that, it was people around me who, through very crude ways, made me understand that, well, I'm not a man, or I do not fit into that traditional binary role. So it was, I would say, quite difficult. first. Second, it was also, since it was so much of stigma related to it, it was much later when I actually started Lakshya as an organization. I started meeting a lot of Kinner communities, a lot of trans communities as well, and then I it is also this whole thing of self assurance when you meet people like you. Okay, so then from being someone who is gay identified to actually not even gay, it was more colloquial identity, which is known as Koti identity. Okay, so so when we talk about Koti, these are feminine men who do not cross dress per se, but they identify themselves as being women, and they have a lot of femininity inside, as in they affiliate themselves to the feminine part of themselves. So that was basically it. But yes, right from the childhood, say it's school, neighborhood, within the family, not that much, because my mom was always told that your son behaves like a girl, and she was not very, I would say, she was kind of cool with that whole thing, for up till a certain age. And once I hit the adulthood, the story was really, really different. So yeah, I think it was once again very mix of a lot of things, but mainly a lot of stigma attached with oneself, one being kind of in that identity, I would say. Yeah. I can't hear you.
Other than the family, how was the support from all the people when you first came out? Like, how supportive were they, or how weird it was for them to get adapted to this or anything? If you can.
So for me, I would say from early childhood, I came to know about myself, and I kind of made a pact with myself that look, life is going to be really an uphill task. It is not going to be really, really mainstream in many ways. So I will be ending up having a lot of struggles in small ways. For example, even accessing something, or going somewhere, and trying to be part of something is like typically in Indian marriages, when we used to go, the typical question would come that, okay, when are you going to marry? Are you going to marry or not? Why don't you behave much more macho and stuff like that? So thankfully, the only thing which came to my rescue was my reading habits. And thanks, because of that, I because in those days there were no internet, nothing, and I'm talking about early to mid 90s, I would say. The digital channels were just coming in, satellite televisions was just coming in India, and stuff like that, but not much exposure. The only exposure was through a lot of books, and thankfully, because of my reading habits, one thing was very sure, that I was self-assured that, okay, there are a lot of people like me, and I'm not the only one. Yes, I live in a small town, small tribal town named Chota Udaipur, but world is much beyond this. So in schools, I would say my teacher only, I think I had one teacher, Soundarya Raman, and she was very, very, I would say, very supportive. I suppose others were not very much. within my classmates also, I think I had just, because I used to hang around with girls more, in fact, all the times, not more, and identify myself as being them, and with all their problems and with all their joys and small little things. So basically it was more on those terms. But then what really hit me was in my 12th, I think 11th, it started in that. That's a classical case of adolescence where one starts the biology starts kind of getting in, and it is there on your face. So at that point in time, I really had a lot of difficulty, because I transited to this other school where the school was not very supportive. The teachers weren't at all, I would say. And in front of the class, there were a few incidences where I was made fun of, and that really stuck really, really deep. And in a classical case, what generally happens, as even the statistics actually say, is that I left my school because people drop out. Majority of trans people drop out of their schools. And that is the time when really people need support. I didn't get one. And I am actually, I'm a child of a single parent. It's only my mom. I lost my dad when I was really young kid, actually. So and she has been with government health services. So I think that was quite a bit of struggle personally. It was so bad that I then did not actually join any formal education system afterwards. Then so yeah, I would say it can be very, very rash, very rash. It can change the course of your life, your careers, your academics. The only blessing which I would say I had was this constant reading and meeting people, through which, from a very informal way, actually I started gaining a lot of knowledge. So yeah, so basically I would say it sums up to that. But not everyone can take that.
So, Sylvester, you had mentioned to me that you have worked a lot with trans communities, especially, and I'd like to understand, at present moment, what kind of challenges do they face in the political climate, basically? Yeah, current situation in political climate in India.
So I think current situations, I would say, are very, very funny. Let me put it that way, because in this in this government, the present political climate, if I see it, thanks to the government for reading down 377 and getting the transgender act, and then the trans bill. Subsequently, first the Supreme Court of India, and then the government of India came up with its own trans rights protection bill, basically. So the bill says a lot of things. It promises a lot, but when it comes to the hardcore implementation part, that's where we just do not just do not catch up with the reality. Let me put it that way. And having said so, I really admire the steps of the current government to to put a foot forward, a very forward-looking policy, basically, an act. But when we talk about its implementation, it's at ground level. I think there are too many gaps. Let me give an example. For example, the government of India have started something called the transgender shelter homes, which are known as Garima Graha. In fact, we were the first one to Lakshya was the first one to implement that and put that in Baroda. Presently, we have 25 people living there 24/7, and we support them with skill building education, job provision, as well as, of course, free food, shelter, and all that comes with the whole package. So now what happens is that the funding of Garimagra is not at all regular. So it's more than 2 years now. The fund has only come for the first year, but for last 1 year, and as I'm talking with you now, we do not have those funds. It is thanks to organizations like Lakshya that we can internally support our people. So I'm kind of giving you an example of Lakshya, but then transgender bill also talks about the larger thing is every state should ideally have a transgender welfare board. Okay, it is only in Tamil Nadu. It is only in Chhattisgarh. We do have something in Maharashtra, but once again, not very functional. Something in West Bengal, not very functional. So even in Gujarat, let's take this thing. In Gujarat, we on papers we do have a transgender welfare board under Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, but the problem is that it is not functional. Even after its formulation, not even a single meeting has been chaired by the Department of Social Justice and Empowerment. When we talk to them and say that what is the funding which you're giving to the cause of transgenders through the welfare board, they do not have any funding. They say that we are going to allot a certain amount, but it just doesn't. We've asked them, why don't we do something very basic as the census? We do not exactly know the numbers, how many numbers of people are there, because to formulate a policy, you need some statistics to start with. Okay, the only studies which have been done been done by the UN organization, UNDP in more to be more specific, UNDP, UNAIDS, mostly data which is related to STI, HIV/AIDS and stuff like that. But when we talk about a proper census of people living in that state, so that you can actually formulate strategies or policies basically to for the larger good, for the larger welfare of people. But that isn't happening. So, well, I can go on and on and on with that if I come into the policy part of it and the implementation. But yeah, I think these are some of the unfortunately shining examples of how a policy could read, how a document could read, but with almost zero implementation on ground. Yeah, but yes, as I said, I really thank this government to do that, to take a step, but then I think there are so many gaps which it doesn't want to look at it. And I'm sure in a lot of other things, it's not only about trans, I'm sure. We are in a very constantly changing and a very dynamic world. So everything affects everyone. Even the women's movement would, equally affect our movement. How we look at gender, how we look at politics, environment, a lot of it.
All right. So I heard you had organized Gujarat's first gay conference back in 2000. So tell me about it. How was that?
So, as I said, in even in 2000s, I think the basis of it actually started in 1996, 97, when I was in my 12th. And then I dropped out. So basically, in those days, we used to have something called pen friendship magazines. In those days, people didn't used to connect through internet or WhatsApp and stuff like that. It was more of letter writing to far distant friends through inland letters and 15 paisa postcards. So far and wide, though there used to be these magazines, mostly very heteronormative magazines, where people used to kind of exchange their addresses and write to each other with postbox numbers and all. So pen friendship was a big thing and a very in thing in those days. And at that point in time, I got in touch with a few people from Gujarat, and they said that they would want to get connected and initiate something. So actually, I would say I continued this process for almost 2 years. And by the end of the second year, I was, every month I used to get 60 letters from different parts of Gujarat. I think that was the starting point of where, because at that point in time, even Manvendra Singh Gohil, I was introduced to him through, once again, pen friendship. And then then I asked him that, let's create a platform. And in fact, in those times, it was illegal. But what fun to there's no fun in to basically follow a very classical missionary mode, I would say. And at that point in time, I said that it's okay, let's just all of us meet. And we had diverse people from the age of 70 to the age of, I would say, 19. In fact, I was one of the youngest ones. So I think I was at that point in time 18 or something. Yeah. So we held this conference in Rajpipla. Once again, Rajpipla was not even a district. In fact, it was a part of Bharuch district at that point in time. It was just a small tehsil, a taluka place, basically. And we did this conference in the government forest college. They approved, and they said, because of course Manvendra was there, and because he comes with this the royal family background, so they kindly approved that you can use this venue. And we got a free venue, a free hostel, a free kitchen, people to cook for and stuff like that. And then we invited people, and once again, this invitation was only through phone calls, the landline calls, and the letters. And 70 people turned up from 11 districts of Gujarat. And that was something, because I was not expecting that, that 70 people would come, and people from smaller places like Gondal, Mandvi, Kutch, Bahucharaji, Sabarkantha, Mehsana. People would generally not hear much about these small, sleepy towns and all. And here they were, 70 of them. And we also called at that point in time Gujarat State AIDS Control Society, because Manvendra and I were already in touch with them, because they wanted to do some work with the gay and trans communities on HIV awareness and prevention. So we did that as well. So they came in, and in fact, this was such an informal meeting. And of course, there were a few talks on HIV awareness, prevention, how do you do it, and stuff like that, how to be more safe and how to protect oneself and all. But I think by the end of third day, we all were very determined that this has to take a form of something more formal. And that is when the name Lakshya came in. And so Lakshya actually, so the outcome of that conference, 3-day conference basically, was Lakshya Trust. In fact, it was Gujarat State AIDS Control Society who said that, just register it as soon as possible, because we want to award you with a project. And we were not ready for that, because I wanted to actually pursue fashion designing. It's very typical, but yeah, I wanted to go a very typical way. But then, my education also was somewhere hanging somewhere, and I wasn't sure what to do. And at that point in time, this thing came in, and I grabbed it. And then, we started this organization with the first offices in Baroda and Surat. And then after 3 years, Rajkot followed. So in those days, when, even when in Baroda, it was so difficult to find people to work, because the moment you talk about homosexuality, it's men and men getting together, and and the early HIV days, I would say. At that point, it was very difficult. In fact, it took me almost more than 1.5 months to find my first team on ground, and with a lot of this thing about confidentiality, that the confidentiality would not be compromised. We will not share the name and this and that. But then finally, we kicked off with our first intervention projects in Baroda and Surat. And that was the first formal work which we started with the government of Gujarat. Yeah.
That was wonderful. So what changes have you noticed in perspective of people, like from 2000 till now? What are the differences? Are people more gentler? Are they more kinder? Are they more used to LGBTQ communities in 2023?
I think we've come a long way from being illegal to hosting a talk like this. It's a range. Oh my God, it's a range. So my house was raided 2 times by local police officers, hoping to find something, because we do a lot of, when we started, we didn't have an office. So it was my rented home, where I started my office. And we have something called, in HIV programs, we have something called information, education, communication materials. Okay, so they kind of came to know that there is a in a very vernacular word, I would say, the very gay group, samlaingik group hai kahin, and they are kind of doing something and all. But when they came in and we showed our papers and our government contracts and the work which we do, for them it was very unfortunate because they did not get any kick out of whatever they wanted to. But from those days, I would say, where in fact, even my first interview in the local newspaper, which is now closed, but in those days it used to be Lok Satta newspaper in Gujarati. I remember very, very clearly my interview. Actually, I gave this interview to the Times of India, to a very close friend of mine, Lekha Menon. And they actually totally cut, copy, pasted it according to their own masalas, and then they put it in the Gujarati newspaper in red. The whole interview was red in ink, every word. Okay, so so we have seen days like those. Now I would say people are there were so many cases where people even didn't know that, okay, something like this even exists. If you go to smaller places, smaller villages, smaller towns for that matter, even smaller city, tier 2, tier 3 cities and all, people didn't even a lot of people at that point in time, that generation, I would say, didn't know, okay, something like this even happens. Now there is awareness, thanks to a lot of social media, thanks to media per se, thanks to the rising standards of education also. People are more aware. Yes, I have seen that change. At least on the face of it, it looks that people are aware, people know about it. Deep inside, I still have my doubts. Okay, because once again, not everything is on face value. I may be, I may want to sound politically very correct in my social circles, and I can empathize with the cause. But, and I'm sure we all have seen people like that who, are internally very different. And that's fine, because that's how humans are. So, I'm not kind of, blaming anyone on that. But yes, I would say change has happened. Now, people, when we, articles on social media, news, even television channels, we have movies, themes, basically, focusing on those. The biggest shift for a lot of feminine men and trans women, what I have seen is the portrayal, the horrible portrayal of the feminine males or Koti communities and transgenders, typically, stereotypically in across the whole 90s, I would say. I will never forgive the industry for that. It used to be so typical. Either it used to be Shakti Kapoor or something like that with painted nails and some very gaudy makeups and stuff like that, to now to the influencers, the trans influencers, I would say, not only the social media, but the larger, I would say, is Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi herself, for that matter. We have Kohinoor, once again, Shushant Digvikar, Akka Kohinoor, basically. So we have, and I'm sure down south also, they have a lot of regional people to look onto. So yes, there is change, and I think in a couple of years, I would say the change is really fast. The kind maybe because of the social media, or we are actually seeing this huge new wave of a new India, which for for person like me, who is the 90s adolescence, I would say, not kid, I would say, 90s, yeah, mid 90s, I would say, I'm still, comprehending within myself. So in a way, it is very, um, um, it's very hopeful. It's very nice to see that. It's very overwhelming, happily overwhelming. But with that, also, once again, having all that awareness, but there is also, a lot of deep-rooted stigma still within. In those days, maybe the abuse was very direct and verbal. Now it's through trolls and internet, and it can get registered, and it can go in many, God knows how many ways. So yeah, it is, once again, it is, it's challenging in this dynamic world, I would say, but I'm hopeful. For sure, things have changed. Yes.
Glad to hear that. What is the support you receive, like from corporate agencies or corporations? How accepting are they for queer and trans people? What has changed?
So once again, thanks to the NALSA judgment in 2014, the Honorary Supreme Court of India, which gave this path-breaking judgment. Even in majority of the Western countries, they do not have a legal third gender identity, but in India we did that. So I think a lot of things opened after the judgment, and majorly also after the trans protection bill, which came in through Parliament. What happened is that, of course, a lot of corporates kind of came in and all. Our experience here in Gujarat is that yes, there, especially in cities like Baroda, Surat, Ahmedabad, corporates have been very open and very, I would say, welcoming towards the communities, and putting them at certain job levels, so that issues like this can be mainstreamed. In fact, after opening of my first Garima Grah, which we did here, we have local corporates like, I would say, Bombardier, Seat, ABB.
Wow.
Yeah, I think a lot of them, I would say, Shell petrol pump, for that matter, they have been really open and welcoming towards the cause of trans people. So yes, I would say that there is there is an entry point, and they have been I would say they have been open and positively open about it. Interestingly, we had kind of also on the floppier side, I would say, we did have, and I would not like to name them, but we did have a few of them, the bigger names as well, who would, I would say, pay a lip service only. There is one in a banking sector, and maybe some others in manufacture and all, this thing. Also FMGC line. And as I said, I'm not going to talk about them, but it was more about just clicking the photographs and doing a meeting, and then not actually translating that into something more concrete. While the corporates like Seat, like ABB, like Bombardier, then we have Shell and all, they have actually put their words into practice, and they've done it. So we have people from our shelter home, and not only shelter home, but from within the other local communities also, actually serving in these organizations, and many other smaller factories, and many other smaller units also. Okay, so I think that is really good. And my only this thing is that you know, corporates, it would be really nice if you know, within the corporate ecosystem, if we have systems wherein people, because it's a real fact that most of the trans people would leave their formal education from in between
Useful.
10th and 12th. So the qualifications may not match, but if there are systems which are put in place where, for example, if you're hired for a specific job, you do that better or really good, and then you are kind of put into some more elevated positions and stuff like that. Maybe on those lines, if that could also work, and I'm sure they would be also thinking on that. But yeah, I think I would say that this would really add the cherry on the cake.
Basically, like a system for any regular person. A system
Yeah.
for any regular person should be
Yeah.
used.
Yeah. So
That's great.
when we talk about hiring transgender, unfortunately, it is still at very much of an entry level jobs only. But what about the so there should be some way where you can actually crack that and then kind of go some, maybe 6 months to 12 months, you do some work with them, and then you start doing something. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not a corporate person, but then this is just a thought. Yeah.
So tell me about the shelter home of operations. What kind of challenges and how rewarding did you feel after your experiences?
It's a madhouse.
I can imagine.
So yeah, but very, very needed madhouse. One place where people can call home. The sad reality with a lot of trans communities is, thank God I wasn't thrown out of my house, but many of them do. And we've received calls at 1 o'clock from Rajasthan, in Jaipur or Udaipur or somewhere else, that just give me the address and I'm coming there. People from Odisha, Tripura, a lot of from within and outside of Gujarat, I would say. So when we started Garimagra, once again, very much a dream project, because that is a very core thing which anyone would need, is roti, kapda or makan. Food, shelter. That's the very, very basic this thing. And when we started, frankly speaking, I wasn't very sure that we would be able to fill in this number of people. But when we opened it for communities, and when people started coming in, within 1 year, we crossed 25 mark people. So 25 people full-time living there. Okay, so till now we had almost around 60 people coming in circulation. So when I say 60 people, so 60 people have been these kind of people who have ever lived there, okay, for whatever duration of time, and then they've got jobs, we have secured them their jobs, and then they've moved on. Of course, how can I forget Tata Steel, Jharkhand, Bokaro plant? 5 or 6 of them from Baroda shelter home are full-time employee with their own quarters and stuff like that. So that's one. When I talk about Garimagra, so we focus majorly on job provision. So what we have done is we have actually created a very strong ecosystem working with the local corporates, which I just named. Okay, and these are the factories, these are the plants which are based in and out of around Baroda, I would say. Okay, so so any person who comes there, the first thing is independence, and independence, financial independence. I have been very clear that this shelter home is going to be of a empowerment model and not of a welfare model. So welfare model is something where, okay, I've kind of, I've lost my hopes, and I've come from my home and everyone has kicked me out. Now what do I do? Then I do sewing classes, this, that, candle making and all, which is great. But the only issue is that it doesn't, maybe it doesn't give you enough money. Maybe for an individual it might be good, but when I'm looking at systems, it's better to find proper jobs so that people are placed and at least financially secure to take care of their lives. So what we generally do is, whenever person comes in, so anyone who is the age of 18 plus, identifies oneself as a trans person, and has a trans certificate, or if he or she doesn't, we help them to get one from our office here, and is willing to live there, as well as importantly, take up the jobs, because shelter home is not a vacation home. We are very clear on that. Within 15 days of anyone who's coming in, we make sure that they are into one or any other job, part-time or full-time. So that helps a lot in fighting a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of mental health issues, because in a typical boiling point, when someone leaves house and comes to another place, a lot of it, what we have seen is a lot of suicidal tendencies also among people. Okay, so best is that what we do is, of course, there are formal counseling sessions, and we do have counselors as well as a psychiatrist in some cases if that is needed. But ideally, we make sure that people get their jobs, and then they're on their jobs ASAP, so that they people get on with their lives and start. The flow of life should not stop. That's the whole idea. So that's one. It was difficult to set it up because something like this was never done before. So in many ways, I knew that we are going to make a trail out of this whole thing. This is going to be an example which will lead others, and of course 12 other Garima Grah also opened after 4 months of our initiation. So that was one. And here, generally, what happens in Garima Grah, that people are allowed to stay till 1 year. But if they want to stay for more than that, on case-to-case basis, we then decide that because only getting a job is not enough, because there are a lot of landlords who would not give their houses on rent to transgenders, where openly, means it's difficult. It's difficult to even get homes, even if you have money. In some cases, I've seen that people charge more rent from trans people just because of their gender expression is different. So yeah, so at many times what we have people here is that people are doing jobs and also living here. So I'm also thinking maybe at some point in time, not now, but maybe in future, maybe a working transgender hostel where people are working at. It's like working women's hostel, something like that, which we have in cities and stuff like that. So yeah, but this is something which is very close to our hearts, and this is not a project because people live here. So we have people taking turns making food, different delicacies from different states, and we have picnics and film screenings. We have Holi, Dhuleti, Diwali. We have Christmas. Oh God, we do all that as well. But yeah, it's fun.
That's amazing. You mentioned mental health issues. What do you see like the most common when it comes to the present Indian society scenarios?
Once again, look, I'm not a mental health expert, but my experience with working with the communities is so first, I think first let's start with the history of it. Till the 70s, I would say, early 70s, when American Psychiatric Association basically took out homosexuality from this mental health disorder list of mental health disorders. So there is a history of something which is wrong, either with the body or with the gender. So it's a long history, and in fact it has been and in some cultures it has been a history of persecution also. Thankfully not much in India, but yes, some parts very strong, I would say. So it all starts with that. So I think the first journey from within oneself is self-confusion, doubt, a lot of it. What extremes I have seen, I would say a lot of suicidal ideation, especially young teens. When in fact we had a couple of cases where we have lost very young people, fellow community members, to suicide, and I think at that point in time it is actually mental health intervention is more needed for the parents and the families rather than the person, the child or the adolescents, or the person whom we are talking about. But it actually happens exactly the other way around. People, parents generally go to take their son or daughter to shrinks, and then depending on how the psychiatrists sees the world, or how his or her world is formulated, through that lens the person is then passed through. So here we do not actually have any so of course, yes, in a couple of years what has happened is the Indian Psychiatric Association and other associations, basically, they have surely said that this is something that we are not going to treat, or this is not something which will require a treatment because it is not a disease. But as many Indian practices of health, I would say, a lot of doctors, even counselors, psychiatrists, they do not yet they for money or for any other thing, they accept the patients, they would then treat them, they are on medications. There have been shock therapies also in 90s. I think even in 2000s it used to happen. I'm sure it is even happening now, but maybe at the closed doors. But there used to be, in fact, it was very common in 80s and 90s to go to that level of intervention. So anxiety is what I can, anxiety, depression, very, very, very common. Self-doubt, lower self-image, very, very lower self-image, not able to, mix around with people and all. In fact, I myself maybe, have gone through phases of it in parts and full. I didn't even remember. So, it is as common as that. So yeah, this whole the whole culture of guilt and stigma, it's so deep rooted. So obviously it is going to affect mental health, and also in India especially, a lot of gay men, due to one or the other reason, are heterosexually married also. They do marry as well. So what happens to the spouses? What happens to that relationship? Because in home there is marriage, but outside it's totally something else. And I'm talking about the larger LGBTQI. I've not even touched lesbian women, trans men. That's a Pandora's box altogether. So it's difficult. It's difficult to navigate. And as I said, I have at my own level also kind of experienced this, maybe in bits and pieces at times, maybe. But yeah, very much.
Wow. Okay. So we are already running out of time. So I'm gonna move on to the poll questions, and I'm also gonna introduce my founder, Shravani Mulapati. She's joined the webinar and she's with us, and she'd like to speak with you. Just let me address to the audience before that, and before we move to the question and answers, I would like to request the audience to take 30 seconds to answer a poll for us. The purpose of the poll is to help us understand you a little better so that we can curate the topics that we bring to you. You can also let us know in the chat box how you found out about Vishwa Talks. If you are a Vishwa Talks subscriber, have heard about it through friends or family, or found out about it on social media. While you take the survey, the poll questions, I would like to express my gratitude for everybody who has joined us today for their presence and contribution to making this webinar a success. I extend my gratitude to our speaker, Sylvester Merchant, for taking their time to grace the event. My apologies. I'd like to invite Mrs. Shravani Mulapati to continue the session.
Namaste. Very courageous of you and the Vishwa team to come out with this talk. Thank you so much for bringing this talk to the public. The social media doesn't support us. I'm surprised, but why should Facebook? Why should Instagram? Why should so many platforms ban these topics? I mean, what is it that, why do they need to? It's not illegal anymore. So this is something that we need to address. I would like the audience to please understand that while Vishwa is unable to send the message of these talks to the general public because we are not allowed to, while there is a need to bring in awareness of these topics in the general public. Because just like you and me are humans, transgenders and the LGBTQ community also need, people from that community also request and need some respect, some understanding, some support. So my request is to each of you, whenever we come up with any controversial topics or a topic which you feel that needs social awareness, each of you, please share it with all your groups. Once again, I would like to thank Sylvester Merchant for this wonderful talk.
Thank you.
There were a lot of things that you were telling about the Supreme Court order, the trans protection bill, and you were talking about that this has not even passed in majority of the Western countries. When you said that, what do you mean?
So when I say this, once again, if we typically look at the United States of America, because we look onto it and many other things as well. So they do not have a specific official gender. Okay, so for example, if we look at passports, if we look at now in the bank applications, even in Aadhaar card and everything, they have male, female, others, even train reservations. Okay, we have male, female, others, transgender, you specify what exactly you are. So I think when I say in Western countries also, if they do not have it, is because maybe once again, I think their understanding is still, I would say, developing. While as in India, when I would say the advantage of something in India like this is that we have a culture to fall back on. So in fact, one of the arguments also within the Nalsa judgment also was about the cultural aspect of the trans identity. So we have Ardhanarishwara, we have Shikhandini, we have Bruhannala. Arjuna comes and becomes Bruhannala for 1 year. Okay, so we have Yalamma Devi, we have Baucharaji, the goddess, and all. So there are so many things that India actually already, in fact, in Jainism, there are 5 genders. It's not only men and women. Okay, so as the ancient knowledge, as a center of that knowledge, I would say, the Eastern knowledge, I would say, is we were much ahead in many ways. It is just that it's such a long journey and so much of interventions also during this long journey. A lot of us was also lost. So in India, for example, transgenders and all, there has been a social space, though very limited, but there has been there. You look in Western countries, no, there is nothing. There is no history as such. We can boast of that. We can boast of that identities as well here. Okay. Once you go in the Yalamma temple in northern of Karnataka, you know that 50% of the devotees, the bhakt of Yalammas, are directly transgenders. And then the other 50% are sex workers, female sex workers. Okay, so this has been not going on for 1-2 years. It has been like for centuries. So there have been in Tamil Nadu, there is this Arvan, the god Arvan. There is a whole folklore where there are 3 days of Purnima, 1 night of Purnima and 2 other days, where a huge festival of transgenders they take place there. In Gujarat, the same 3 days in Baucharaji. So we have something like that. In West, they do not, because it's very top to bottom approach for the whole culture as such, the formation of cultures, more of Abrahamic cultures, I would say. And also, I think maybe the trans movement otherwise is also not very strong as it has to be in many ways. So I think that is also one thing I would say, because when I visit US and when I say that, okay, fine, do you means I have friends there. Of course, it's a very liberal country and people wouldn't mind and all. But when we talk about putting that thing into policies, when we talk about something very simple as opening a bank account in a nationalized bank. You go something more simpler, train reservation. You go male, female, others. It's there. Third gender. Yes. Even Aadhaar card.
In the USA?
Huh?
In the USA?
UHC? Sorry?
In America?
No, they don't. I'm talking about us. Here.
So I'll just take a minute since we're running out of time.
Yeah.
We will be continuing with this question and answer session after the program. But Thank you so much to each of the audience for being so supportive of this talk. You just don't understand what it means to all of us and to this community that you are here encouraging just to understand the pain, just to empathize, just to listen to what the issue is itself a big thing. Thank you so much. And I would also like to thank Vishwa. They've done, and the team, a fantastic drive they have done for Ugadi, that was the new year, where more than 50 communities were touch-based. Many people from these communities have donated their old stuff, which has been given to needy in and around Hyderabad. Wonderful job, Vishwa team. You all have done a great job. And to the audience, I understand a lot of Vishwa Talk subscribers have actually participated in these donations. Thank you to each one of us for giving us that encouragement, for trusting us to do something as simple and as beautiful and as so needy for many people. Thank you so much for your generosity. So I'll continue with this question and answer session for those of you all who are interested. I actually wanted to add to what you said, Sylvester. We have our Chief Minister, ex-Chief Minister, Nandamuri Taraka Ramarao garu.
Yes, NTR.
He did a role as a, he was a hero. He was a very accepted man in the Andhra Telangana society, and he actually played a beautiful role. I think of Bruhanala, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
I'm going to send you a video clipping of it when I find it.
Yes. In fact, I'm a sucker of all the South Indian films, especially Telugu and Tamil cinema. Very much. NTR, yes, the point I'm making is that he brought it into mainstream. It was accepted in mainstream. It was given its due respect and its due space. Okay, because I've seen this very I think he's also there in the same movie on the Mahabharata, Maya Bazaar. But of course it's a different film. But yeah, Maya Bazaar. In fact, I have a Telugu version, the colored Telugu version of Maya Bazaar.
Yeah. Okay, so coming back, I'm really proud to be an Indian where India has given space to this community for thousands of years. Now that when I'm talking to you, I'm getting present to that. So another thing I wanted to ask you is, you said there was a trans protection bill through Parliament. What exactly, when was it passed? What kind of support has it given?
So trans support bill, I suppose, I'm not very good with the dates, but I think somewhere in 15 or 16, I suppose. 18. I have to search it. But so trans support.
There was a transgender act. Is it the same?
Yeah, it's no, the act. Yeah. So first it was the bill, and then the act came in. There were some issues with the bill where, the beggary, for that matter, was almost kind of prohibited, because they said that you're asking for the beggary, but actually it is not beggary. Then the counter argument also went in that it is not only about beggary, but it is something like dakshina, which people used to kind of give, because if Brahmins are taking dakshinas, even now, for example, then it is as natural for kinnars to stand for their own traditions. So that was one part. But of course, very, very importantly, when I just if you look at the bill, basically, when the act came, of course, it was very much different, because there was much backlash also. But still, I think the biggest issue with the act presently, I would say, is about I think the duration of punishment for a person who has who has raped a trans person, or some physical violence, or not rape, I would say, some physical violence, which is only for 2 years or something like that. While for women, it is much this thing. So we wanted this to be as equal to as what women would otherwise have. So I think I can just remember two major salient points here. Yeah. You're mute. Sorry.
There is one question from Ms. Sriti Jyoti.
Namaste to all of you. And as usual, I think I'm getting repetitive when I say this, but for want of better words, I would say, Vishwa, you guys rock. You never fail to amaze us with the kind of topics you choose to come up with. And Sylvester G, I would like to just, I don't know what to say, I cannot help but marvel the kind of guts and the bravery with which you kind of face the so-called unnecessary persecution, if I may say so. Because I don't believe that any of us possess the right whatsoever to run down anybody on the basis of caste, color, creed, gender, etc. You are no less human than what we so-called normal human beings are. It's the same God who has created everybody. I fail to understand this mindset of people who, how dare they discriminate? I don't understand this. This is one thing. I really can't. And to top it all, in India, we have never had this kind of a bias against, please excuse me when I use this word because that's the only word that is used. With complete humility, I would like to say, we have never ever discriminated against homosexuality or lesbianism or transgenders in the past. For God's sake, this is the country which gave Kama Sutra to the world. I don't know why people have gone down in their way of thinking. The Kinnars had their own respectable place in our society where they were invited to, bless the newborn baby. They were awarded and rewarded in abundance, which has all taken a backseat thanks to this Western education that we are pushed into. And very many years ago, I happened to read this article in one of the newspapers wherein it dealt about topics about why the transgenders, or rather they are subjected to prostitution, or why they are leaning towards it. And it was very shocking to read that article, because it said that one of the major reasons why they are, pushed into this kind of a means to sustain themselves is because they have to contribute towards their gharanas to live there. And because no longer they are called or, treated with respect and that kind of I don't know what's the word for it, but where they're no longer invited to bless the newborn child or, the newly married couples, etc. They are running down on their financial independence or their means of income. And this is one way that they can sustain themselves so that they can live under the roof that is, accorded to them. I really don't understand when will we wake up and, try to analyze and see that everybody has a right to live in this planet. I fail to understand this. And while not eating into time of the others, I would like to tell Sylvester Ji and also the people at Vishwa, if there is anything that I can do to contribute towards your acceptance and help you out, please do let me know. I'll be more than happy to do that. I am a Bharatanatyam dancer. If there is anything that I can do for you all, please do let me know. I will do whatever I can. And from today onwards, you guys are going to be part of my prayer list for sure. God bless you.
Thank you.
And once again, kudos to your bravery. I am amazed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you so much.
Welcome, my dear. Most welcome. Please don't say that.
So when we did this program, another such talk previously, we had approached the local government, Andhra government, and they were ready to give shelters across Andhra Pradesh to the community. However, we could not find NGOs who were ready to, reliable NGOs who we could offer this service to. So that is, if there is anybody who's willing to take up running these shelters, please let us know. We'll direct you all to the relevant people.
Yeah, I have someone from Hyderabad, and she herself is a trans activist. I can put you guys in touch with her, because unfortunately what has happened that even Andhra Pradesh and even Telangana both have not yet received any trans shelter till now. There are other states, other 12 states basically, where the trans shelter home, they have the presence. But in fact, for the one here in Hyderabad, actually, I was actually in talks with that group, the transgender group. They also have their NGO to actually set up something on those lines with the government. But I don't know, then it did not kind of, it did not go through, but I was there for the technical support, and yeah, I remember that.
And what I wanted to say was, I remember reading a book a decade or 2 decades ago on this community, and that Hyderabad had homes for such communities and how they used to keep the homes impeccably clean and all. What happened? I'm sure they existed through the Nizam's times and through all those. What happened to those homes?
So I think if we look at the southern culture, especially Andhra, Telangana, very, very strong, very thriving Kinnar and the Hijra communities, basically. I've been to Vijayawada House, I've been to Hyderabad as well, I've been to Kakinada. So these places basically, and there is one in Guntur, I suppose, Guntur or some nearby place from Guntur. So these communities are directly, in touch with me. As far as the Nizam's time and that is concerned, I think that is the thing. In older times there was a support from the Raja, the royal court. There was always a support. Even in Gujarat, for that matter, there were always a very strong support from the local courts. In fact, in the Tamrapatra, they used to actually write that for you guys, there are these many villages where you can actually go and take your Yajman Vritti. It was not Bhik, but it was Yajman. So as Brahmins used to take Yajman Vritti, so something like that, they used to do that also. Till now also in Hyderabad, they have a big house, a very, very big and very traditional old house they have in Hyderabad. But I would say that I think they also run a government HIV program, as far as my memory serves me well. But I can put you guys in touch with them for sure.
So I'll just read out a few messages. One from Mr. Srinivas Murthy, thanking you so much for sharing the challenges of living as a transgender individual. You brought the human dimension very well. I learned a lot from the session. I'm a retired professor of psychiatry with special interest in self-care for emotional health. There's a lot of measures for empowerment of individuals for self-care, both to become strong emotionally and to address at a personal level distress. Please get in touch, and the details have been given. One, Ms. Arida Raj, congratulations, Vishwa, for hosting this thought-provoking webinar. One, Mr. Surpaneni Prasad, such talks help in raising awareness, sensitivity, and respect for every strata of society. Some more comments I'm not going through, but yeah, if there is any further questions, Trishant, if I missed any questions, please.
I have one more question.
Okay.
What message do you have for LGBTQI youth? How do you want to encourage them? How do you want to make them feel more safe at this point of time?
If I were to give a direct message, I would say you're not alone. Yes. And there is nothing wrong. Goddamn, there is nothing wrong in being who you are. Let not other people, drive your conscience by, whatever may, or, by manipulating or by giving or misleading information, because at the end of the day, whatever is in your core will prevail, because that is the real you. So I think have a lot of confidence, put the head high and walk the talk, baby.
I have a question here. When we had these talks, I had offered people could come and join, but people didn't come forward and actually join. I was wondering why.
So is this people you're talking about from the community?
From the community into the agricultural part of some businesses.
Yeah. So look, once again, there is so much of fear and so much of self-stigma of even being identified or being labeled. There is so much because so much of people would want to still want to align in the line of what is right and what is wrong, and they do not want to see, because there is so much of it on stake for a lot of people. For example, if I'm a businessman and if I'm gay, okay, being gay is one of my identities, which is okay, but then because of that, maybe if my business is getting affected, maybe my social relationships are getting affected or something like that, it's better I'll keep mum. Of course, that's a different thing, that then I will be in a Pandora's box of my mental health issues and stuff like that, because I'm not open and I'm not even expressing myself that way. But then, these are the wars or the fights, not wars, the fights which people choose and pick. It's up to whoever the person is, whatever works best for them, because I cannot be too judgmental, because I know from within the community also, the fact that I have to give I'm in such a talk, for that matter, itself shows that it is so not mainstreamed yet. Okay, so they will have because if you talk about the agricultural part or that, maybe people are married, people don't want to be, they would have sons and daughters, they do not want to kind of open. Maybe people are not married, but they do not want to kind of deal.
It has nothing to do with laziness or anything.
Also, it may be there are factors. There are a lot of factors. You just don't know. Who said that because you are from the community you cannot be lazy? Oh my God, no.
Another thing I noticed is, see, a lot of functions happen, whether a child is born or a marriage takes place. I can understand if somebody comes to a well-to-do family and say, hey, we want a dakshin. But when you go to a poor family, a working class family, who's having a salary of 12,000 rupees a month, and then you demand, I want 15,000 rupees, and you collect 15,000 rupees, somewhere, the sympathy for the community gets lost. How do you answer when someone comes to you and say, hey, this is what happened?
Yeah, so I think one has to look at it holistically also, and then I'll come to the main this thing. So what happened just after Britishes came in the country is that a lot of work which was traditionally kind of divided into the four parts, basically kind of started getting blurred in many ways. Okay, but still, for example, the supremacy of Vedas is Brahmins, for example. I'm just giving examples. Now what happens, you look at the Silicon Valley, dominated by...
Are you saying they're Brahmins?
Mostly.
That's patient, perhaps. You don't get a job.
Not only that, because of the buddhi is what the whole Veda is knowledge, is buddhi. It is not. So once again, I'm it will require a larger discussion. I'm not getting into the caste system per se in here. But now what happened with the Kinnars is that in 1860, Lord Macaulay, when he actually he made the Notch girls and the transgenders illegal because of their very, very strong contribution in 1857. For them, mutiny; for us, the first freedom war. Okay.
Oh.
Now what happened? Yeah. So then it was made. In fact, the first persecution for transgenders, the rule came in. In fact, it was named as the Hyderabad Eunuch Act.
Oh.
Oh my gosh.
The Hyderabad Eunuch Act actually says very clearly that not more than a company of 4 to 5 eunuchs can go together to some place to travel. So the mobility was, stopped, because they used to supply arms and ammunitions to the then army, which was against the British East India Company. Okay, so when Hyderabad Eunuch Act came in, a lot of them were deprived of even moving out to their own places. Okay. And then what also happened is that there were, once when we got our independence, there were zero reforms in this community. There were almost zero reforms, because after independence, we had women's movements, we had women to getting into voting, education, services, and it's now so mainstream. But one has to understand, we've been made legal only in 2014. It is the youngest social movement of this country.
Wow.
Women, when we said that women will vote in 1950, we still have 75 years of history for women and their development. So where women are, this moment has, it's 2014 when the Supreme Court came with the verdict. It was only after 2 years. So 14, 15, 16, something. It was only after 2 years that the trans bill came in. So it is still very much evolving. So what I mean to say is that, once again, I'm not justifying it, but yes, I think what I want to say is that the moment you start providing jobs and start mainstreaming people, a lot of it would just go nil, because we have people here in Garimagra, and we have so many transgender, they do not want to go into the Yajman Vritti, the Bhiksha Vritti at all. They do not want to. So a lot of it is also replacing by job. But once again, one has to also understand the whole thing in context of what we are talking about, where 75 years of freedom and that whole movement, and where only 3 or 4 years of the child is just born. It's not even, it's an infant actually. So that's one. But yes, what we are doing here at our groups is that we tell people that wherever people, means generally what happens that now coming to this specific incident, after giving the whole context, is that now people are now realizing, as communities also, that they will have to ask only certain amount of money. In fact, at many places in many cities, they have actually come out with a community order that only this much amount will be asked for, say example, the childbirth, only this much amount will be asked for a marriage, for example, a new house, for example. So there are slabs which are now kind of, coming in existence. So, but as I said, it will take time, because there is no other means only for people, a lot of people for that matter.
When the recent judgment came that marriage was not acceptable in India, what was the reasoning the judge had given?
So once again, I think it was about the Indian value system of the Indian Indian family, the traditional, the definition of a traditional, definition of a family, a classical family, which would generally have a male, a female, a very binary definition, and their children. And also they were more concerned about if tomorrow they will ask for adoption of child and all those things, so what will happen. So now the thing is that, and in many other Western countries also, if you look at many Western countries who have done these kind of progressive judgments where same-sex unions are legal and even adoptions are legal for that matter, people basically, there is nothing, frankly speaking, within the community also, look, one has to understand that not every gay guy will go and start rushing to get married. Okay, there are so many of them who would love to be single. First, it is not that from tomorrow onwards the courts will be full with applications of gay marriage and these unions and all. So that is one. Second is that if two people want to live together, look, traditionally, not traditionally, but if you look at some history of something called a civil union, in fact, one of the first recognized case in India was in Gujarat, in Baroda district. There is a small tehsil called Naswadi Taluka. In that place, there were two primary school teachers way back in 1982. And they had done a Maitri Karar, a partnership bond, which was registered with the local district court. Okay, these two women, both Sarkari Naukri, now very much into retirement, living their lives. Okay, they do not bother, they are not even concerned what people would think and all. Similar kind of a case in a place like Dahod, which is once again closer to Baroda, almost 2 hours or something. There we have two professors. They're still now in a government college, and they're living together. So what my observation is that people have been doing this with
people will do what they will do, but giving
they
it
will do
this, what I'm seeing is the way when we approach courts, oh, is this judge amenable to our thought process? Only then we will put up the case. I will ensure the hearings get made. So, who was the judge who gave this judgment? And so, historically, what was in India? Was it not 1,000 years ago, such communions? What is his reasoning today for not accepting? Did he give a judgment with the reasoning behind?
So yet I would say the case is not completed. That it's still in motion. Let me put it that way. Okay. So now, if you look at I don't know how much I can put it in public, but if you look at the dynamics of the case, Justice Chandrachud, just CJI, Chief Justice of India, presently, Dr. D.Y. Chandrachud, he was the one who was one of the judges for reading down 377. Let's take the history. Okay, so at that point in time, he was one of the 3 bench judges. Okay, very, very proactive, very strong, very community friendly also. Now, what has happened, and this is my own reading of the whole thing, is that looking at this government, what they will do, they will classically, obviously, they will go against it because they stand for everything which is going to be conservative. Okay, if they are not going to oppose it, then they're killing their own for what they're standing. But having said so, the same thing happened during 377. the homosexuality wala judgment. Okay, what happened that the government of India clearly said that no, we are not going to do this. We cannot support. Baba Ramdev also jumped in. Some fathers also jumped in. Some Maulvis also jumped in. And then they said that no, we are not going to take this. And in India, we cannot. Now, what happens is that they said that, okay, fine, what are the arguments now? That so once again, the whole traditional binary system of family, the cultural ethos and all that came in. Equally, on the other side, on this side of the fence, there were equally very strong cultural arguments also, citing Kama Sutra and all the traditional this thing. Now, what also happened is, now when we look at it, before the case was going to open, before the three judges kind of gave their final judgment on 377, just days before, Mohan Bhagwat from RSS, he comes very open and he says that, look, we do not have problems with these people. They were already part of our culture. Okay, and he shuts this. This is a very short statement he gives and he just disappears in thin air. And then after some days, Devai Chandrachud, and then there was a woman judge also, and there's three bench judges. And then there's in fact the lady judge, I don't remember her name, but she actually went on to say that history has to ask forgiveness from LGBTQI people because we have done them really, really wrong for a long time, in especially after the freedom of India, if we say that we are a democratic and a republic state. So that was one. Now, exactly what is happening is that government is giving their stance. They have to oppose because they are in that position to oppose. They have to do that. Okay. So that, for example, if tomorrow, and I'm very sure that this is going to come in favor, mark my words, they are almost going to deliver this very, very favorably, because once again, because now from the High Court, all the cases have automatically transferred to the Supreme Court. Okay, CJI is there. He still has 6 to 12 months before he retires. Okay, and before he retires, I'm sure he's going to make history out of his name also. Okay, now what is...
This will happen pre-election itself.
Yes. So now what is also happening is, if you look at, and this is very funny. That's why I'm telling you, these are very funny times we are living in, because what we are saying, the extreme right is exactly doing what extreme left is supposed to do.
Correct.
Okay. They are making it legal. They are getting transgenders in legally. They are getting the bill also passed. Okay, with this thing, if that happens, they're opening the marriage also. So now left has nothing to say what is right.
So, but transgenders don't have what is right still.
Sorry, Nick, once again, look, that's what I'm telling. In India, for all the systems, it takes time. For example, when the first girl child went to the school, to the first girl child who completed her doctorate, it was a long time. Okay, so what these people are doing is, or what any systems, I would say, they are opening the gates. And then it is the gradual development of the communities. It is gradual development of the society at large also. Okay, I still remember one of the first girls' school in Gujarat. Well, we were taught about it. It was in some 1880s or something. When the first girl was admitted, the whole family was banished. Hukka pani band kar diya tha. From within their community. They were all banished and all. But then today, if you look, we have once again thriving schools of women. They're going to colleges, this, that, everything is happening. So of course it took 100 years. Okay, so here also, of course, we don't want 100 years. We've waited really, really long. But what I mean to say is that there are systems, there are things where, for example, yes, you're saying that, okay, transgenders are still not having their rights. You're right. But then people like us, people like Lakshmi, people like other South leaders from the communities, one or the other, they will file cases, they will stretch the systems to its core, and then open the world for the larger good. So here, what I mean to say is that at least we have started the entry point. The entry point for me is, for example, the legal recognition of trans person. So that is an entry point enough to file a case that, hey, if we are legally recognized, what is about my right to education, my right to food, my right to this, that, everything. So then other new cases will come in, and other new developments will start happening. Okay, we could not actually think in those times that, even we will be having a shelter home. But within 10 years, within 20 years, I can see a shelter home legally possible. So that itself is a change. So I'm hopeful, but
Yes.
I am also very practically aware about how Indian systems in general work. It is not only for trans. It is how we are as culture. That's the problem.
Wonderful time to see so many acts being passed, allowing humans to live as humans. Yeah. And I hope, as you said, Chatud, before he leaves, will give a positive judgment.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
So with this, we will close this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hope
I'm so, yeah.
Chatud will pass the judgment as predicted by you before he retires.
Yes, please pray.
Yes.
Please pray for us. Thank you. And we
Thank you.
want a lot
Great
of warm wishes from you guys. Thank you. And thanks, Vishwa Talks.
Thank you
It
so
was
much.
amazing being here. Especially thanks, Trishant. Thanks, Shrivani.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for providing this platform. Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we'll close this session. Thank you, Aman, for the testimonial. You're saying well spoken, Sylvie. I'd like to mention the upcoming talks before we close the session. The next session is on art and culture. It's by Uma Maheshwari. It's a Telugu talk. She's the first Sanskrit Harikatha artist, former honorary principal of Sarvaraya Harikatha Pathshala, receiver of Rashtrapati Puraskar or the President's Award earlier this year. The date and time is 1st April 2023. The investigating officer for economic offences wing of Delhi Police. And he's going to take a talk on 8th April 2023, 11 a.m. on physical banking frauds. I'd like to thank everyone who has attended the webinar today. You can reach out with your doubts. Do follow Lakshya Trust and Vishwa Organization on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere on social media and online. Thank you so much. Sylvie, I'll wait for you in the breakout room. Thank you.
Okay, how do I go? Should I be
We'll
here
just send
only?
in a link. Yeah, you just be here, you'll get a link. Right.